Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Conversation of Our Generation, where we are solving the problems of today with the wisdom of the past. My name is Nick Jamel, the creator of the Conversation of Our Generation and the host of the podcast here. And today we will be discussing the Recovery of Family Life by Scott Yenor. And I'm hoping I'm saying his last name correctly. I'm not sure if I am, but he is a tremendous thinker based on what I've read of this book. And I'm very glad to have had someone who's helping him promote this book, or I'm not exactly sure if it's the publisher or the promoter, but reached out to me and asked me if I would look into this book. I looked at the website, seemed like something that might be up my alley, so I said, yep, sure, I'd be happy to take a look. I've read half of it and I can't wait to share it with you because I think it's just a tremendous book that really dives into a lot of the problems that we have today, and a lot of the problems that I've been talking about with people like uh, the ladies at Freed from Feminism, the Vital Masculinity podcast, and others, where we're looking at a society that's misunderstanding and misrepresenting the family, misunderstanding and misrepresenting gender, and where all that comes from. And he is able to trace that. I don't know how many books he must have read in order to write this book, but it is one that just blows me away with how much he pulls in from this movement and gives this full movement that I think has kind of been amorphous a name, and he gives it he kind of ties together the unity within the thought and shows how it is cohesive in a way and why it's wrong and dangerous and what we can do to push back. And so I think all that is great. And I think what he's doing is awesome. And if you're watching this on YouTube and not listening to the podcast right now, you might notice that there's some new stuff behind me, right? I got the office revamped a little bit. I plan on getting another bookshelf. I have some books lying around out of view in stacks. And so hopefully I'll have that bookshelf here soon. It's on the Christmas list. So Mom, if you're listening to the podcast, just a reminder, right? No. But it is something that I plan on getting here soon and putting in here. But yeah, my wife, as a Christmas present, helped me paint this, make it look a little nicer, hopefully kind of revamp and make, just bring a little bit more to the conversation of our generation. So I'm excited for that. If you're not, if you're just listening to the podcast, definitely I'll put some stuff on Twitter and Facebook. So find me there, Twitter at @ConOfOurGen, Facebook.com/Conversation of Our Generation, or just go over to YouTube and subscribe. Just search Conversation of Our Generation in YouTube and I should pop up. You can subscribe to the channel and watch today's book review to see the new office space. So definitely excited for that. And hopefully can continue to fix the setup a little bit better and give you guys a little bit better of a show. But I also want to be diving into this book. And before I do that anymore, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Leave a good rating and review on Anchor, Apple, Google Play, Spotify, all that stuff. Other places as well, wherever you can find it, wherever you listen to your podcast, it should be there. If it's not, message me and I will figure out why it's not and get it on there. But it should be everywhere that I can think of. But there's always new ones popping up. And like I said, subscribe on YouTube and follow me on Twitter and Facebook. And if you're interested in this book, definitely check it out through the link and go to the show notes. There's some more information on the Yenor book. You can follow them on the book's account on Twitter. It is, I'm pulling that up here. It's at Recover Family, or if you search Recovery of Family Life, it should pop up as well, I think. And definitely follow them as well and check out what Scott is working on. I guess I should say Scott Yenor is working on. I don't really know him by first name, but I think definitely check that out as well. And so let's dive into the quote of the week. And I picked this one because I think it really explains Scott Yenor's idea here in this book. And we'll go through a little bit more how it works because I think it's an interesting layout of a book as well, which is why I wanted to review it. But this quote is, in one of the first chapters, he says, "This revolution is a sexual revolution in the large and proper sense. I call it the rolling revolution because its principles are such that they will only with great difficulty, if ever, be achieved, and they can call for a continuous transformation of marriage and family life." And I think that is great. That's, I think, what is so hard to pin down is the moving of the goalposts And I think he does a great job of describing that there is an end in mind that is probably unachievable, but if it is achievable in any way, it is hard and it is going to be hard fought on the side of who wants to really disrupt human nature in a huge way. And he shows why how that's the case, how even the early feminists, the second wave feminists who just wanted the right to work or whatever sort of thing you often hear that it's they weren't crazy about, making you call in the pronoun or weird on gender ideology and all of that. No, there this is a cohesive group of people who are putting out these ideas, and Yenor does a great job of tying together all of these disparate thinkers and showing how they're connected, how their ideas are connected, and how they build on one another in ways that you wouldn't necessarily know if you're just looking to kind of the popular culture for this, right? Your Hillary Clintons and your politicians who are feminists, right? They put out ideas like we need this particular thing or that particular thing. You don't see the cohesive the cohesiveness of the entire movement, and he pulls that out and shows where it's trying to go and why it keeps moving the goalposts because it's marching ever towards a goal that they have in mind, and he is able to explain that. And I think that this book is insightful because he's able to really pull that idea out and show how it's flowing in that direction. And so I think the other thing that is important is that he also offers solutions. He also offers kind of a way out. And so that's what I want to talk about in this is kind of that destruction of family life and that recovery of family life and kind of trace how he goes through that. And I also want to kind of, before we dive too far into that, remind you that someone did reach out to me about this book. If there's other people out there who are saying, hey, here's a book that Nick should check out that I'd like to have on the conversation of our generation, let me know because I'm happy to take a look at them. I'm not necessarily going to review every book on here, and maybe not necessarily in the most favorable way if I were to, right? I can review the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital and tell you why they're wrong and why you maybe should read it if you want to know the other side. But I'm not going to endorse it as a good thing necessarily. But I do think that The Recovery of Family Life is a good book. And other people out there who have good books like this, I'd love to take a look at them as well and learn more. That this book came out in October, apparently, when I was looking at their Twitter. And so that's about the time that I was reached out to. And so I think it's good to get the pulse on new things that are happening and not just focus on the ancients, right? We're solving the problems of today with the wisdom of the past. And so the reason I think this is important is he talks, like I said, about the destruction of family life. And so kind of some of the things that he walks through is that rolling revolution. What is that? He talks about feminism and the abolition of gender, contemporary liberalism and the abolition of marriage, and kind of beyond sexual repression. And then he talks about some of the curbs on the rolling revolution, the sexual difference that's inherent to people, right? That you can't really get around. Problems with contemporary liberalism and problems with ending sexual repression and some of those things. And then after that, he moves into sort of the post-rolling revolution world, talking about some better family policies, some things that can be done to push back and to recover from this problem that we've had in our culture. And so that's kind of the flow of the book. And I think that, like I said, it's incredibly well researched. He explains the problems that arise from feminism and this sort of I don't know if it's a simplified liberalism or a kind of liberalism that isn't curved by anything, right? I think that you can have a liberalism that is softer and has some edges, but this sort of unending liberalism that's 100% relativistic and very individualistic, where you kind of hold that above all else. And a liberalism that's separated from religion in any way, shape, or form, I think is what this problem is. And he does a great job at explaining how feminism and that sort of secular liberalism play together to create this rolling revolution. And he traces these feminist activist works and demonstrates how our society has really attacked the family and family values instead of building them up like we should be. And I think he does a good job as well of showing kind of your traditional classical liberal thinkers, other liberal thinkers like Tocqueville, and some of those who I would say a lot of these feminists would argue that they're building their ideas upon, right, in that tradition of liberalism. He shows how a lot of that early liberalism cuts against what we're seeing today. And not only does he explain this feminism by extensively citing and quoting their work, rather than hearing these ideas second or third hand, what he does a lot in this book that I really like is he quotes them, he cites them, and instead of paraphrasing their ideas, he's like, hey, trust me, I'm not just saying that they say this. Here is a quote from one of their works, and you can see that, right? And I think that that is crucial to have that specific tie to what people actually said. So you're hearing it, maybe secondhand, I guess, because you're hearing it through someone else, but you are reading that person's words. And if you don't believe me how detail oriented he is on this, buy the book, and there are 70 pages of notes and citations. So it's like, I was like, oh man, I'm only halfway through the book at one point, and I looked, I'm like, no, I'm actually much closer to being done. There's just a lot of notes to look at. And so which is good because I think that's what you want, right? If I don't have to necessarily go through and look at the notes to study further, but if someone challenges me on an idea that I get from this book that I put forward, something that convinces me here, and I can say, okay, I can use that argument, right? Now you can go back and say, okay, where did we get this from? I can get back to that original source and show people, yes, this is really what they said. This is really uh, a well-researched point. It's not just me spouting off ideas. It's something that I'm pulling the idea from the book, but I'm able to go back and get that original source and show where that argument comes from. And I think that that's really helpful in today's world where science is everything, and you need to kind of have those experts to make some people listen. And I don't necessarily think that that's a good way of coming about knowledge, but for those who think that that is important, I think you can argue people on their terms, right? It's kind of like St. Paul said, you know, I become, I forget exact. Now I'm going to misquote it because I'm on the spot. But it's like I become everything to everyone, right? I need to be a Greek to the Greeks and a Gentile, Gentile to the Gentiles and a Jew to the Jews and talk to people. That's very paraphrased, right? But you need to talk to people on the level that they understand and in reference to what they know. And so that's what I think you can do with this very well. And where are the positive side of things, right? Where does this leave off? Well, Yenor doesn't just leave us with all the problems that we've been left with by our culture. He explains the basic problem as well as some of the other issues curbing that progress of the revolution, like I mentioned. But what I like most is that he shows a way forward. You'll notice that I'm drinking whiskey today because this is not being recorded on Friday morning, but Thursday evening instead. So having a glass of whiskey after a long day of work. But my goal here at the Conversation of Our Generation is to solve the problems of today with the wisdom of the past. And I think this book exemplifies that. He takes tremendous thinkers of the past like Tocqueville and others. He quotes Aristotle or cites Aristotle. He does all of that. And then he combines that with what people are saying today and the problems that that we have facing our culture and the ideas that are expressed by the people creating the problems. And then he proposes prudent solutions. And, there may be things that I disagree with him on, but I think he does a great job and I think that if we had a discussion beyond just the book, right, it's one-sided. I can't necessarily talk to him and answer points that he makes. So that's different. But I think we come together on a lot of ideas for sure. And I think that the fact that he's proposing solutions is crucial. There's so many books that just say, hey, here's the problem. And you're like, okay, so I didn't read a 250-page book to just hear about the problem. I want to know what can be done about things, right? And I wanted to hear someone's perspective on how you solve that, how you tackle that issue. And I think he does that very well. And so that's another reason why I wanted to review this book and put it out there for you to check out. So definitely check it out. Follow the book's Twitter. I don't know if it's him or his promotion, that someone who's promoting this for him that runs it, but at Recover Family on Twitter, or Recovery of Family Life. If you check them out there, follow them, get the book. There's links in the show notes for you to check that out and to grab your copy of the book. And as always, definitely leave a good rating and review if you're listening to the podcast. Wherever you're listening, hit that subscribe bell on YouTube so you get notified when those come out. And if you're on the website or you're listening, you can go to the show notes and sign up to the newsletter to get updates on the conversation of our generation. I want to be sending more email. I'm going to send out some more emails going forward and keep people up to date and offer some extra stuff there. So definitely get signed up for the newsletter and get involved with me at the conversation of our generation. I want to hear what you have to say. So definitely let me know what you think of this book review. If you get the book, let me know what you think. And if there's other books that are out there that I should be reviewing, let me know that as well. And so thank you for listening to this episode of the Conversation of Our Generation. Let's get the dialogue going. I'll talk to you next time.